want to start with a story to help you get a feel for how I got into this issue of metrics are really hard. So I joined Microsoft in 2005 at a level called partner. Those of you that haven't been at Microsoft, Microsoft had normal level numbers, and then they decided to change it, and they wanted the range to be disjoint so it wouldn't hit the 5, 6, 7 that you're all familiar with. So they decided to start in the 50s. And so Microsoft levels, start the 50s. If you get to 63, you're senior. 65, you're a principal. 68, you're a partner. And at the partner level, it's like a law firm term, you're supposed to be optimizing for the company. And so as I got my employment agreement, it says you'll be getting paid in relation to this SPI, the Shared Performance Index. And there's a website that, when I joined the company, I went and looked at that Shared Performance Index website, and I learned a lot of lessons from it. And I want to share a few with you. One, lagging metrics are terrible. We can't move them. There's a feeling that, we're being measured on something, but there's no way I'm going to move that metric. The second thing is it was complicated. There was a website that had to explain everything. And I joined and I read this and I go to my manager and I say, why does this metric make any sense at all? And then you hear something that you really don't want to hear. My manager says, forget it. Nobody understands this by Steve Ballmer. And so when you think about building metrics, simplicity is a virtue. Make sure people are able to understand why the metric's important and how do you even measure it. The complexity of how this was measured and the adjustment factors and the corrections and all that was just horrendous. And then there were metrics that were infrequent, annually or semi-annually. How do you have feedback to tell you if you're moving in the right direction when this is based on an NSAT survey that is done in December and then again in May or June? And then finally, there were way too many metrics, right? And this is why this is called the Otis Redding problem. I want you to listen again and you'll hear this.
Everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do. So I guess I'll remain the same.
So, too many metrics, too many people tell him what to do. He'll remain the same. Okay. I want to spend a couple of minutes just to tell you who I am and my background so that you understand my biases and where I'm coming from. Got a PhD in machine learning at Stanford. I was director of data mining and processing at Amazon in the very early days. Funny story, we were about 20,000 people at Amazon at the time. I recently flew on a flight to Seattle, actually. And the person near me had all this Amazon gear, and I said, you work at Amazon? She said, yes. And I said, wow, that's cool. And she said, when you worked at Amazon, how many people were you? And I said, about 20,000. She said, I'm in HR, we are 30,000. Okay, so anyway, one of my teams was WebLab, which was the Amazon experimentation system. I then was a technical fellow and core VP at Microsoft. I worked for 14 years leading the experimentation platform team, building it large scale. So we were launching about 100 new experiment treatments every day. And then I went to Airbnb, was there as a VP and technical fellow, worked on relevance, personalization, and experimentation. I co-authored this book, the HIPAA book, which some of you may have heard or seen, Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments, translated into multiple languages, and I'm now basically consulting. I teach a quarterly class online, and of course, continuing to learn. So that's me. I want to talk to you about culture, and I love this slide by Vineet from StatSig, actually. He says, look, everybody focuses on this. But the real problem, the thing that really kills a company using the data correctly is the culture. So one of the hardest things to believe and to deal with is this data. It's fact. Most experiments fail. And they fail to move the metrics they were designed to improve. It's not that it's not moving a metric that you didn't plan for. You tell us the metric, you run the experiment, and 80, 90% of the time, the experiment will not improve the metric in the direction that you want in a stat-sig fashion. And here's some data for you. This column of success rate is something that we published. So early on at Microsoft, as we were starting, I think we were really careful to only launch the real experiments that had all the data and everything. And our success rate, 33%. When I came to Microsoft, nobody was running experiments. I said, let's build an experimentation platform team. I said, why would we do that? We know how to build products, right? We heard this talk by Vijay about how Microsoft does this very careful design. They code, they QA, they release 3 years later. And they believed that they were doing everything correct. And I said, look, at Amazon, I was in charge of Web Lab. And when we looked at the statistics, more than half the experiments have failed. The answer was we have better PMs here. Right? It was a complete denial of the possibility. And then when the data came out, this is across Microsoft. This is Bing. So I worked at Bing for multiple years, 15% success rate on our experiments. And then I worked at Airbnb. Trying to improve search and relevance at Airbnb was really hard, 8%. Lots of machine learning algorithms that we went and tested offline, and they seemed to work, and then when you deploy them in an A/B test, they don't do a lot. The other two columns is just something for you to think about when you think about running experiments. And this is if you're just using the classical statistics frequentist approach, which almost every product uses, including stat-sig. People say, I'm using this threshold of 0.05 on p-value. And therefore, they think that that means that 95% of the time, they're going to be correct. They're not making an error if they launch a treatment that is statistically significant. But it turns out because of these low success rates, that 0.05 has to be adjusted using Bayes' rule into something that's called FPR. This is the false probability risk. This is the probability of you making an incorrect decision when you ship your treatment. And I'll pick one box because the competitor to stat-sig called Optimizely defaults to a high alpha of 0.1. So they're not defaulting to 0.05, they're defaulting to 0.10. And that means that about 36% or a third of the results that are claimed to be statistically significant are false. Okay? Now, that's even high if you use 0.05, 22%. So 1 in 5 of the things that you think are stat-sig are not going to be so. Okay. A little bit about maturity. I think, I mentioned the platform itself is critical, but don't just think about the experimentation platform itself. It's only one piece of the puzzle. There are other aspects about, is your data quality high? Do your pipelines produce data every day correctly? Do you integrate everything into the software so that the cost of experiment is low? So we came up with these axes, and we wrote a paper. This is going to be an eye chart. I don't expect you to look at it, but I just want to put it out there. Whenever I start consulting with a company, the first thing I do is I say, okay, where are you on these 6 axes? Are you walking? Are you crawling? And then it helps them see what's next. And again, some of this is technical. A lot of this is cultural. Wanted to just share with you the problem that these things take time, both culturally and technically. So Bing runs about 1,000 experiment treatments a month. This is when I was there. Typical treatment exposed to millions of people. You have to deal with the fact that there is no such thing as Bing. Right? And that's true for whether it's Facebook or Google or Amazon, everything else. We computed that there are 30 billion variants that you fall into when you go into Bing. Okay, so think about the QA effort. When somebody reports a bug, you have to make sure that you're able to replicate that experience that they were in. This is the graph of the scaling. You can see we started 2008 to get serious about this, and it took us 7 years to get to the point where the slope is sort of stable. At this point, anybody that launches anything runs as an experiment. The limiting factor is your development ability, right? So scaling took us a while. Okay, and if you want to compare this, these are the graphs for some other companies, for Google, for LinkedIn, so that you can see that how companies try to sort of scale experimentation, and they're good. They're able to double every year for a while. This is a fun slide. What are excuses not to run A/B tests? We'd love to run A/B tests, but our team shaman advised us against splitting our user base. Apparently, it's bad karma. Oh, damn, this went too fast. Clicker just... In our company culture, we believe that user experiences are predestined. Running A/B tests might upset the balance of the universe. So let's stick to one version and trust in fate. Or we believe in karma. The universe wants our website to succeed. It will just guide the right users to the right buttons. Who are we to interfere with the cosmic flow by running tests? Okay, so... okay, enough with ChatGPT excuses. These are generated by ChatGPT. I want to talk about the real underlying reasons that people tell you that they're not running A/B tests. This statement, to me, captures a lot of it. It's difficult to get a man to, sorry, it's a man in the quote, to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. A lot of the times, people avoid running A/B tests because it threatens their job, okay? So, at Microsoft, PMs are used to sort of defining that next version of Office that will come out 3 years down the road. If they have to propose alternatives and 80% of them are going to fail, right? They have to think about sort of they're not the king anymore. They're not as good. Or people will think they're not as good as we thought. I talked to editors. We worked on MSN. We had all these A/B tests to improve it. But they said, look, I was hired here as an editor. I'm a designer. This is my job. They feel threatened by this. Failure in the ideas, people think it hurts their professional standing. So I've seen so many projects where success is declared on where we are in the plan, and we get to 100%. We celebrate. Microsoft used to get a Ship It award until Satya changed that. So excuses I've heard, we know what to do. It's in our DNA. Why don't we just do the right thing? You don't need to test gravity. We don't need to test something that we know we're going to ship anyway. Getting reliable data requires a lot of mundane work. Right? Here's who wants to be data-driven? Everybody. Who wants to implement click tracking? A couple of other slides. These survey that I ran earlier this year got 200 responses about why people are not running A/B tests. I think the first is real. And I want to be the first to admit, if you don't have 100,000 users in a test, the statistics are marginal. They're not reliable. Once you get to 200,000 users, things work out magically. But if you don't have enough users, that may be a good reason to delay running A/B testing. The rest, I think, are poor, right? These are all prioritization decisions. Is data collections unreliable? Well, no budget. Well, ethical concerns. I think this is a poor reason, and people don't understand that when you don't run an A/B test, you are running an experiment. You're launching something to 100% of users, and if the metrics tank, you're going to roll back. So it is an experiment. It's just an inefficient experiment. You can do much better. Okay, and there's more of these reasons, and there's an overlay that Yusheng here generated for his interpretation of the reasons. There's another slide. I won't go through the details. Walmart, similar cultural issues that you see at a company. There's a nice paper that was published. Again, good reasons that are being listed out. Many of them are related to culture. If you're looking for excuses early in the year, we say we need to figure out what we're doing. Near November, we say, we're not going to finish by December, and then everybody's going to be out. And then he fills in all the rest. I want to take you through a model that we came up with, and this has fun, good stories so that you'll remember it. But a lot of organizations start out with this mode of hubris, then they start to measure and are surprised. They go into something called semmelweis reflex, and then they get fundamental understanding. So a few slides on this evolution that we go through. The first stage is hubris. Right? Love this quote by Asimov: experimentation is the least arrogant method of gaining knowledge. But in stage one, people say, we know what to do, we are sure of it. Okay, lovely story, kind of painful, from 1849. This is cholera time. In the UK, in London, John Snow claimed that cholera was caused by polluted water, which by now is sort of agreed upon, but the theory at the time was that it was due to air. Bad air was flowing in. This is what was causing cholera. So here's a landlord, has an apartment house. People say, look, our water stinks. We have a real problem. Like, people are frequently diagnosed with cholera. And so he comes and says, what's this, BS that you're telling me about? There's nothing wrong with the water. And he shows them and drinks a glass of water. Okay? He dies 3 days later. True story. That's hubris. Okay, even if you are very sure of your idea, be open to the fact that maybe we should validate something. Okay, what gets us into trouble is not what we don't know. It's what we know for sure that just ain't so. Okay, sometimes attributed to Mark Twain, but apparently unknown author. Here is that hubris in a real email at Microsoft. Okay, we were at Bing. We were trying to expand experimentation to Office. Look at this email. We've decided to ship a feature without running the experiment. We are quite confident in the feature. Our teams have a rich history of shipping features without any experimentation, something that may be alien for folks from Bing. Okay, and this is my manager's response. I have a rich history of driving my car with my eyes closed. I'm quite confident I know the way to work and only crashed a few times. This is a cultural war, folks. It is hard. It takes a while to get people from here to being able to run experiments. We did it. Office now, in a monthly release, every month when Office updates its client, and there's about 200-300 experiments that are in that shipping version. Okay, let's go to stage 2 of the model. Measurement and control. So here's this guy, Semmelweis. He works at a general hospital in Vienna, and it's a teaching and research hospital in the 1830s, and there's a disease that's very common. You haven't heard of it, doesn't exist today, but it killed more than 1 million women trying to give birth. Okay, so big numbers. The mortality rate was horrendous. So a woman comes into the hospital, there's a 15% chance she dies. Okay, 1 in 6 or 7 die. But because of this measurement that he does, he says, holy cow, there's another ward that is not staffed by doctors and 2% mortality rate. Okay, so remember, measurement begets insight. He tries to now isolate the differences. Are they getting the hard cases? No, they're just coming in. Is it birthing position, ventilation, diet? He just cannot see what's going on. He even goes all the way to is the laundry done separately? What is going on here? Now, this is a teaching hospital, and so there's a nice benefit to people that teach. They have this sabbatical thing, and so he goes away for 4 months, comes back, the students are elated. Hey, when you're gone, look at that death rate. It plummeted. Okay, so he figures out it's something related to him. Okay, not a fun thing to discover. But he has this insight, which is it's a teaching hospital. Every morning they're doing autopsies. They look at the women that died yesterday, open them up, trying to find the disease. And so he comes up with this conjecture. He says there are particles, today we call them germs, that we are transmitting from these cadavers to the healthy women on our hands. Okay, now, he says, let's just try to clean it. We'll use cleaning agents. He tries a bunch of them, comes up with this chlorine and lime mixture, and the death rate goes down to 1%. Okay, so look at this amazing success of measuring, coming up with the data, finding a solution, and then problem. Stage 3 is Semmelweis reflex. This is disbelief. People are saying, where are these particles? How can we see? We cannot see them. You're not scientific about things. He is actually dropped from a post in Vienna, goes back to Hungary, does the same trick there, reduces the death rate to 0.85. They try to publish this paper, and the reviewer writes, we believe that this chlorine washing theory has long outlived its usefulness. It is time we are no longer to be deceived by this theory. So kind of a hard sell. He believes that he's responsible for all these women that are dying. He's not able to convince the word. His wife takes him into a mental hospital where he is killed, apparently from germs in a cut to his hand. But so today we have this Semmelweis reflex. It's a rejection of new knowledge, okay, because it contradicts something we strongly believe in. Okay. Fun story, 1807, meteorites fell in Connecticut. Okay, this was like unusual, they didn't understand it. President Jefferson, who was considered to be a good scientist, read the report, and this is what he wrote. Gentlemen, I would rather believe that those two Yankee professors would lie than to believe that stones fell from heaven. Okay, so entrenched beliefs, hard to correct. This could only happen in the 1800s, right? This whole hand washing thing? No. 2005 study shows that lack of hand washing is responsible for 2 million healthcare associated infections and 90,000 deaths. Okay, a lot of people are still dying because our doctors, the medical staff is not cleaning their hands enough. In the last few years, a lot of effort to improve that. Okay, the last stage is this fundamental understanding. So Louis Pasteur, of course, showed that strep in the blood of women with childbed fever is the cause. This is the germ theory. Look at this, 2008, 143 years after Semmelweis died, there is a 50-euro coin to remember him. So remember this evolution in many areas. I think we're still in the 1800s. If you think about mobile design or use of real estate or mobile, we still don't understand many of the things, but at least we can start to make progress by looking at the data, make decisions until we're able to build these fundamental theories. I'm going to conclude the fun story. Well, first of all, I love this line. Don't think of these as failed experiments. You win some, you learn some, right? Every experiment that fails helps you adjust your intuition. That doesn't work. That key doesn't open the door. Let me try something else. But here's a fun story. Thomas Watson, the senior, the founder of IBM, had this promising young executive involved in some risky venture, and he lost $10 million at the time. This was a lot of money. Nervous man comes into the office and said, I understand the logical consequences of losing so much money for the company. I guess you want my resignation. And Watson replies, you can't be serious. We just spent $10 million educating you. Okay, remember this. Learn from failures. That's it. Thank you very much.